So the political vice, the concept is this. Politicians, and you can see there's donkeys and elephants on those little heads, so they're both Republican and Democrats inside the vice. And the whole point is they run for office, and once they're in, they are no longer more loyal to their party, they're more loyal to their incumbency. It's all about staying in power. So they are actually more loyal to each other, and they just argue about policy to sort of see who gets to control the levers of power. And they get pressure on a constant basis once they're in office. They get pressure from the media, they get pressure from public opinion, and they get pressure from what I call influencers, and I'll come back to influencers in a second. On the media side, there's been a huge evolution on media pressure over a long period of time. Talk radio has really transformed the way media pressure works, and it's created a whole new category of pressure in a much different way than it used to. And obviously blogs and the internet and all that's going on in terms of electronic media not only creates pressure, but it's destroying, we're right in the middle of creative destruction in terms of what we now call the mainstream media. It used to be, we had this very odd time from roughly the 1930s to about 10 years ago, where essentially the broadcast networks, the Washington Post and the New York Times defined the political agenda of the day. And it was very concentrated, basically 10, 12 people. They would decide what the issues were. The editorial page of the New York Times would decide what the issues were. And that's what was covered in the media, top to bottom across the country. And very concentrated power. And it was technology that made that happen in terms of creating a mass market, both radio and then later on television. Prior to that, media was very fragmented. You had local papers, many local papers in every community. People would write to each other to educate themselves. Think about the Federalist Papers and how that was a way of communicating a point of view. And then what happened as we got another technological evolution, the media started to change when we got to the modern era, cable TV and the internet. And the power of those people at the New York Times and the Washington Post and the big three broadcast networks has been dissipating little by little, and now it's accelerating. Their whole business model is being destroyed because they're losing market share, and audiences are segmenting and fragmenting. But nevertheless, even in spite of all that, the media still has tremendous power and tremendous influence, and particularly the mainstream media. But there's been competition now, and that's, I think, a good thing. I'll give you one quick story about how media pressure works. We were presenting to the House and the Senate caucuses in the Illinois General Assembly the concept that they should have an alternative agenda to what the Democrats were doing, and that it should be a liberty-based agenda. And this is 2 years ago. And they were not buying it. They thought their strategy should be to be the party of no and sit in opposition and let them continue to make mistakes. And we kept saying that you can't build a movement and build numbers in your caucus unless you have something that you stand for besides no. They didn't buy it, and one day the Chicago Tribune editorialized about 6-8 months later, and he eviscerated by name the House and Senate leadership and said they don't stand for anything. Why would people ever rally to the cause? Almost word for word what we were saying. And the phone rang off the hook, and right after that both caucuses started working with us to create an alternative vision. That's media pressure, and that's how it changes behavior. On the other side, we just had a bill pass on pension reform. It's a good, very baby step in terms of reform, but the pressure for that happened because there was so much public pressure, media pressure, and some influencer pressure to reform public employee pensions in Illinois. Within 24 hours, the Speaker of the House, Mike Madigan, put a bill on the floor, voted on it, and had it passed, and the governor signed it. That was because of media pressure as well as public opinion pressure. And there's two kinds of public opinion pressure, as you've now learned. There's orchestrated public opinion pressure, and there's organic public opinion pressure. A good example of organic public opinion pressure right now is the Gulf oil spill. People are ticked off about the Gulf oil spill. That is very organic, and people are very unhappy about it, and it's costing President Obama dearly. People are very ticked off about Katrina, and that cost President Bush. Orchestrated public pressure, in my view, would be global warming and the so-called healthcare crisis, both of which were manipulated and created over a long period of time, eventually culminating in becoming the issue in 2008.